Hello，你好，欢迎回来，Welcome back to Wisdom Wednesday with Johnny Tiger on May 8th, 2024. Have you ever wondered how is it that people in the old days were able to build things that last for thousands of years, like the Great Wall and Pyramid, and many wonders that we still see today. I mean, they have to be fixed up once in a while, but generally speaking, they stay in really good shape considering how many thousands of years they lasted. And then you look at what we have nowadays, it's like crap. Um, this year, Taiwan has experienced a lot of earthquakes, and there's a lot of damage to buildings. And this is something that really have been on people's mind. How is it that uh, structures that we built over thousands of years were able to survive? I'm sure they had earthquakes for thousands of years. I'm sure they had even worse earthquakes and storms and stuff like that. So how is it that even houses and tombs and towers and castles that were built that long ago without blueprint, without modern technology, without computer calculation, they're able to last? While we have all this high tech today, we have all this scientific ways of building things, of blueprint and modern equipment, and yet our houses can't even withstand one serious earthquake. Like what's going on there, right? Well, the sad truth is a lot of the constructions that we have nowadays, they are what Chinese people would refer to as 豆腐渣工程. Translation: tofu construction. It's like they're made of tofu. Actually, tofu cha is even worse than tofu because tofu is tofu. Tofu cha is more like ground tofu. So these things are like worse than tofu. They're like ground tofu construction. Now, there's nothing complicated about that. But when we talk about 豆腐渣工程, like tofu construction, there's only one of two possibilities. One, it's either the skill of the workman or the material being used suck. Okay, that's number one. Number two is that management suck. And I think most of us know in our heart that in most cases it's number two. It's the management. That the skill is there, the material is there, but the management decide to cut costs and try to reduce labor and try to make sure more money go into their own pocket, and then the whole construction is built as cheap as it can be. So some people was going to ask, so how is it that in the old days they didn't have that, right? Like how come people in the old days were they just like more honest? Were they more had better work ethic? What's going on there? Well, today we are going to go back into Chinese history and look at um, different ways people had, the government had, in deterring tofu construction. It's really interesting. When we look at examples throughout Chinese history, we can really see how is it that their stuff, like I know a lot of people nowadays make fun of made in China shit, right? Like I myself, often make fun of knives or swords or action figures or airsoft guns or clothes that made in China, like piece of crap, right? But in the old days, they actually made things that lasted a long time. So what happened there? Well, the first thing that started ensuring quality in products and construction was what eventually lead to what we know as branding nowadays, aka putting your brand on whatever you make and you stand behind your product. But branding started out as a form of punishment and finding out who's responsible rather than for promoting your good name or advertisement. As far back as 3,000 years BC, back during the Zhou dynasty in China, uh, emperors had decreed that workmen have to put their name down on the stuff that they were making. So if you make an arrow, you have to engrave your name on the arrow. You make a sword, you have to engrave your name on the sword. So if that thing, if the whatever you make failed, then instantly people know who to go after. Unfortunately, that system kind of faded out for a couple of thousand years, and it wasn't until about 600 BC during the Qing dynasty that this was brought back and became law once again. Let's look at King Shi Wen, the first emperor that united China during the Qing dynasty, and the guy who had the Great Wall built. Okay, since we are talking about construction, who can be more impressive than the guy who had the Great Wall built, and then that Great Wall was able to last like over 2,000 years, and it's still here. When Qin Shi Huang decided that he was going to conquer all the neighboring uh, kingdoms and states and unite the entire China under one banner, his army was literally unstoppable. They demolished the other like 10, 20 kingdoms without much effort. A lot of people wonder why is it? How were they able to do that? Like what makes them so great? One of their secret was standardized equipment. You see, Qin Shi Huang understood from early on that war cost a lot and things get broken during war. But every war, every minute is vitally important to decide who wins the war. Whoever can get supplies to the front line the fastest, whoever has the fastest horse, whoever can field their troop the fastest is going to win. So he implemented what we already talked about the branding system from the Zhou dynasty. He decreed that we are going to bring that system back, and all the workmen have to put your name behind your, on your product, and you have to stand behind your product. So this means if Johnny Tiger make a, a chariot, a war chariot, and this war chariot, I take it to war and then the wheel falls off, then not only Johnny Tiger, the person who designed the chariot, have to be punished. The people who made the wheel have to be punished because the wheel would have the maker's name on it as well. And whoever put the wheel on would have to be punished as well because the people who assembled the whole thing, their name would be on it as well. That was the first thing he brought in. The second thing that he implemented was all the war equipment from everything from armor to sword to arrows to archery equipment to ballistas to war chariot. A wheel, every spoke, every wheel have to be standardized. And it's quite amazing because when archaeologists excavate tombs from the Qing Dynasty, and again, we are talking about over 2,000 years ago, like over 20, more like 20, over 25,000, 2,500 years ago. Um, when they excavate these tombs and find the remains of the equipment they used during war, whether it be siege engine or chariot or even the harness or saddles on the horse, every piece from these equipment, every component, they were so standardized. They were maybe zero point 0.2 to zero point 0.8 centimeters different. That's all. This gave the king's army a great advantage on the battlefield. Well, when the other kingdoms, if their chariot broke down, they would have to find a wheel that would fit that chariot and, or find a spoke that would fit. that chariot, find a screw or nuts and bolts. I know they didn't have those things, but I'm just using that as an example. They have to find the right thing, the right size to fit. The king's army literally could take anything nearby to put it on there and it would work. Like they could take a screw from the siege engine and stick it on the chariot and get the wheel back on there within a couple of minutes. So they were able to fight and repair the equipment almost on the go because they standardized their equipment like that. And when we really think about it, this was some really amazing accomplishment, especially when everything was done by hand and there's not computer or machine guiding these people to help them make these equipment so up to standard. And yet, because their name had to be on whatever they were making, people were forced to be extra diligent and extra careful. And thus, the king dynasty was born. King Shiwan was able to unite the entire China because they had the best equipment and they had the fastest way to repair whatever that got broken. Now, let's just take a while and think about how many times have you tried to repair a chair, a table, a door, or try to repair your pocket knife, or whatever that you're trying to work with, and you go, crap, I don't think I have a screw that size. I have to go to the store and buy a screw that size, and then hopefully it's going to work. And yeah, and hopefully I know what I'm looking at. Hopefully I know what I'm buying. Oh crap, I don't have a screwdriver to fit this screw. I need to go to the store. Like the Qing dynasty, the King Shi Wen and his people literally made that not happen. Like they standardized everything so everything worked with everything else. And that was really, really an advantage for them on the battlefield. And this idea of branding and putting your name on whatever you're making uh, went all the way to the Tang Dynasty, so 4 or 500 years AD, so like year 500, year 400. Um, and even today, a lot of archaeologists, when excavating remains of structures from Tang Dynasty, you will find that on every brick, every stone, every piece of building material, there will be lines and lines of ancient text, and these are names. Uh, Basically, if you find a brick from a city wall from the Tang Dynasty, on the underside of that brick, it has information such as this brick was uh, made by so and so and carried by so and so and laid in the wall by so and so. So, the, because they had this system, so anytime if there's an earthquake or a storm, let's say part of the wall collapsed and the other part was fine, then they could instantly take bricks from that collapsed section of wall and instantly know, okay, who were all the people that were involved with this section, and they could then investigate, and if they found that there were some uh, cost cutting or problem with diligence or inattention to details, stuff going on, some hanky thing going on, then these people get punished. You get anything from a hefty fine to jail time, and if you were the person supervising and or the people that were supposed to know what they were doing, if you were the specialist, and you were found wanting in your duty, then either you would get put to death or your whole family would get put to death. And this is probably the biggest deterrent in the old days against tofu construction. Um, Nowadays, even though, yes, people still put their name on their product and people claim that they stand behind their product, but when something go wrong, most of the time they go to court, and then after they get a really good lawyer to get them out of it. They say, "Oh, we are sorry, something went wrong, but it's not our fault," and then they maybe pay a little bit of money, and then they walk away. In the old days, that wouldn't happen. In the old days, if you put your name on that brick and that wall collapsed, and it was found out during investigation that you were drunk when you were making that brick, then you get your head chopped off. Now that's a really big difference. A lot of people in the old days wouldn't dare try to cut costs because it's simply not worth it to risk your life or your whole family's life. Incidentally, Chinese people weren't the only one that came up with this whole concept. Way back in the 13th century, people in England have a law that every baker have to put their name on every loaf of bread they made. So if anyone got food poisoning or got sick eating bread, they could instantly identify which baker bakes the bread and who was the problem. So that was pretty interesting. That way across the world, they came up with this same idea, but they were doing it with bread rather than with houses and bigger constructions. Another problem that we see nowadays with construction is that either the people who are supposed to be uh, approving or disapproving, the people who are supposed to be checking if these constructions are up to standard, they're bribed or they don't do their job, or they try to do their job but they don't know what they're doing. They're not they like you would have someone who's a computer engineer who's a supervisor at a construction site building houses, and he doesn't know how walls are built and stuff like that. He knows computer, he knows what the blueprint look like, but it's easy to trick someone like that when the supervisor is not part of the field, when he doesn't know what he's looking at, it's easy to slip one past him. Um, and another problem is supervisors, a lot of time, they don't drop in randomly to check. They'll tell you, I'm coming next week to check your progress. And of course, when you tell the workmen that, then they are going to show you the best foot forward when they know you're going to show up. I'm going to tell you guys a very horrifying real story of how this was done in the old days. Let's look at Emperor Zhu from Ming Dynasty. Emperor Zhu was the founder of the Ming Dynasty. We are going back to year 1369. In 1369, Emperor Zhu decided that the capital city needed a new city wall. And this construction was so big that it took over 17 years to complete the wall, and it took like 600,000 workers or more to complete the project. It was said that Emperor Zhu knew that because the project was so big and there was so much money involved, he suspected and he knew that people were going to cut costs and cut corners and try to get more money out of the government. So Emperor Zhu himself would randomly drop by the construction site with his royal guard, and he would randomly walk up to the wall and check himself with his own hand to see if everything was done right. And any time that it wasn't done right, the people at the construction site would get executed right away. There's no trial, nothing. If I see that you're not doing your job, you go bye bye right away. Your head go bye bye right away. So in September of that year, uh, this again, this is true history. You can fact check this. Emperor Zhu, after dinner one day, suddenly decided, hey, I got nothing to do tonight. Let's go walk over to the city wall and see what those guys are doing with my city wall. So him and his royal guard walked over to the city wall. Well, okay, maybe they didn't walk. Maybe they rode horses. I'm just trying to make this a little bit more relatable. So they went over to the city wall, and Emperor Zhu walked around and okay, these guys are laying the brick, and these guys are laying the foundation, and then he started randomly take uh, his cane and started banging the cane on the wall, and you guys know how it is work. Like when you watch movies and people are looking for trapdoors, you hit the wall. Yeah, okay, that sounds fine. That that sounds yeah, that sounds fine. Oh, that shouldn't sound like that. And so when he heard that, he immediately told one of his royal guard, "Take your take your warhammer and smash this section of the wall." And so the royal guard grabbed his warhammer and smashed the side of the wall, and the entire wall caved in. This is serious. This is supposed to be city wall. Like this is the wall that's supposed to keep enemy out, right? So if you hit it with your warhammer and the wall caved in, that is not good. The emperor looked inside the wall and saw the entire section was hollow inside. So they just paved over the outside, and it was like basically like our drywall nowadays. Okay, you guys know how weak these drywalls are nowadays. So basically, that's what the workmen did. They paved over the outside. They didn't put any material on the inside. Again, they were trying to slip one past the emperor. So the emperor was so pissed, so he ordered his royal guard to grab everyone who was in charge of that section of the wall and strip them naked, and they stuffed them inside that section of the wall, and then they basically paved it over. They covered up the wall, they laid the brick and sealed the wall up with all those people inside. It wasn't until much later when archaeologists found human remain in the city wall, and they investigated and they found out that that's what happened. So ever since that incident, no one dared try to cut cost or cut corner on construction of the city wall because the way these people were executed was so inhumane and so horrifying. Again, if we go by our modern sensitivity, we're thinking, wow, that is so cruel that he buried those people alive inside the city wall. But when you really think about it, it when something like that is done, then you are ensuring that the construction, the job is done correctly. People are not going to fuck around with your construction with your city wall. We can even backtrack to about about 2000 years ago, to the time of the Three Kingdom. Okay, everyone likes to talk about romance of the Three Kingdom. So let's look at this another real example from Romance of the Three Kingdom, the Three Kingdom period, when something like this, when the construction crew was punished because they cut corner. Um, One of the most famous general in the Three Kingdom period was Zhu Zhiliang. Uh, in Mandarin, Zhuge Liang. So I'm just going to say his Mandarin name because every time I say his English pronunciation, my brain almost short out because it sounds so stupid. Zhuge Liang. Uh, those of you who play the game or you follow the Japanese uh, games is Zhu Jilian. I hate saying that. Zhuge Liang was one of the smartest people, one of the smartest general minister for the during the Three Kingdom time. Uh, but I want to take this chance to quickly say this. A lot of how smart he was, a lot of how great he was romanticized by the novel Romance of the Three Kingdom. And this is not to say that he wasn't a great person. He wasn't but Zhuge Liang in real history was more of a backseat driver. He wasn't as godlike as in the novel. In real life, he didn't really know how to lead people in war. He was a guy who come up with plans, but he didn't know how to be a leader on the battlefield. Okay, so there's a bit of a difference between the real version and the novel version. So, Zhuge Liang was a minister, the general for the kingdom of Shu, uh, and he was leading his military to combat the kingdom of Wei at this one time, and the people in the kingdom of Wei came up with this defensive maneuver called the Elkhorn maneuver. What is the Elkhorn maneuver? Basically, they take long wooden stakes and bury them in the ground and angle them forward. So the Shu cavalry wouldn't be able to charge their rank. They wouldn't be able to ride their horses directly to the enemy line because all these pointy wooden stake would mess up their horses and would impale the horses. So this effectively took away the power of the Shu people's horseback ability. So Zhuge Liang, to combat this Elkhorn maneuver, he armed all his infantry with axes. So basically, before the cavalry would ride in, the infantry on foot would come up to these wooden stakes and then take their axes and hack them down and chop them down. And then the cavalry would come riding in to destroy the enemy. In the couple of years that they were fighting this battle or this war, uh, Zhuge Liang realized that a lot of money were going into repairing, replacing broken axes because they were chopping down so many wooden stakes and that these axes keep breaking. So after the war was won, Zhuge Liang felt a bit responsible because this was his strategy to use the axes to chop down the stakes. So he decided to look into replacing the axes himself, so he wouldn't use the government's money. Okay, so this made him a really good person, right? So um, Zhuge Liang took a bit of time and studied how to make axes, and then he took money out of his own pocket and he designed axes and he replaced all the axes that were broken. Now, up to this point, it was great. He's doing a good thing. But the next time, a few years later, they fought a war, and same thing. The enemy tried to use the Alcor maneuver, and Zhuge Liang used his same tactic, have the infantry go in and chop down the stakes with axes. And guess what? Another year or so go by, they didn't lose a single axe. They didn't lose a single axe. And Zhuge Liang was like, what the hell? How come last time we went through thousands and thousands of axes, cost so much money, and this time when I make the axes, uh, they don't break? What's going on here? So he decided to backtrack those broken axes, and he realized that those people who were making the axes were cutting corners using really bad wood, lousy grade of wood, and really bad construction. They didn't put them together properly. That's why they were breaking. It's got nothing to do with his strategy being problematic. So Zhuge Liang had everyone who was involved in axe making for the previous war executed publicly to show people that this is not how you help your country. You do not cut corners when your country is fighting the war. And after that, no one dared to mess around with cutting corners when making weapons for the kingdom of Shu. So some people may ask, well, okay, so that's cool. If you were a general or if you were the emperor, then you could punish people like that. What if you were just normal people? What if you were just normal civilian and you want your house built? Like you can't say you execute whoever is cutting corner. You don't have that kind of power, right? And that's true. But civilians came up with very original ways of ensuring qualities in the old days as well. Take example, there is currently a large house. Well, it's actually larger than the house, more like uh, 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 what you would call it, like uh, almost like a castle, really. But we'll just call it a house, right? I don't really know how to call that kind of construction, like 4 or 5 houses all linked together, like a ranch style house, I guess. So anyway, in Shandong province, in Yantai County in China, there's a house owned by the Mu family, MU, Mu family. And this house was built back in the Qing dynasty, so a good 600 years ago. Back in 1988, this house was officially christened to be one of the best preserved, one of the best kept heritage building in the entire China. And if you go and look at this house, it's amazing. Remember, there was no machinery involved in building back then. It's all built by hand. But in this house, the walls, every piece of brick, every tile, every stone, they were matched so well that the walls were almost completely smooth, that there's no gap between each brick or each tile. In the rare occurrences, rare places where there are cracks in the tile or there where they didn't join completely even, if you look into these cracks in the wall, you can see shiny copper and silver and gold in there. Okay, so what's happened there? Why are there copper and silver and gold inside the cracks? When the owner of the house back 600 years ago, they will call him Mr. Mu. Mr. Mu, when he wanted to have his house built, he had all the construction workers come to him and they had a big meeting. And he showed them a big sack of money, gold pieces, silver, copper, and he said to them, "We're going to do things a little bit different. Okay, rather than waiting until you guys finish and then I pay you, I'm going to pay you at the end of every day." And the workers were like, "Whoa, that's great! Thank you. That's really awesome." Usually people wait until we finish the job and then they pay us. But if you pay us every day, that's great. And Mr. Mu said, "Yeah, but that's not all. I have a condition. I want every tile, every stone, every brick to match up perfectly so there's no crack in the wall. I want my wall completely smooth when you put them together. And every day, at the end of the day, I'm going to come and check uh, if you do as I ask. If there's no crack in the wall that I can see, then everybody gets your pay for the day. Right? Everybody, you'll get 5 gold pieces and 10 silver pieces and 20 copper pieces. That's not what he actually said. I'm just making that up so we can make this a little bit more smooth. Right? So everyone will get 5 gold pieces, 10 silver pieces, 20 copper pieces at the end of the day if I cannot find a crack in the wall. But if there is a crack in the wall, if there's any mismatch in the brick or tile or stone, Then I'm going to find out who is in charge of that section. And if I find out it's Johnny Tiger, then Johnny Tiger, I'm sorry, I'm going to take gold from your pile, melt them down, and put them into the crack. And if that doesn't fill up the crack, I'm going to take silver. And if that doesn't fill up the crack, I'm going to dig into your copper. Well, I'm going to use your pile of coin until we fill up that crack. So whatever left, you take home. So the more crack you leave in my wall, the less you will get paid. And that is how that building, even today, have almost completely smooth construction. Like he used the incentive uh, on these workmen that the better job you do, the more money you get to take at the end of the day. The more corner you cut, the more I'm going to take out of your pay to fix your error. Hmm, that sounds like a great idea. I don't know why don't they do that today. Oh wait, I guess I do, but no one's enforcing that. Anyway, I'll stop being sarcastic and just say that when we wonder about why things in the old days last a long time and why things today don't last, quite often it got nothing to do with skill level, material, technology, but a lot of it comes down to how responsible people are and how severe they would be punished when things don't work out, right? I'm not saying that we should go back to burying people inside city walls, but maybe, just maybe, if there's a more strict and severe punishment system when things break, then maybe we will end up with much more secure and better quality houses. Anyway, just something to think about. Thank you for being here today with me for this Wisdom Wednesday. I'll be back again tomorrow for Toy Thursday. For now, 谢谢 and 再见。